Hi, I'm Amber, and my group, consisting of Megan, Emily, and I, are talking about hazing among athletes. So, among children between the ages of 6 to 17, about 56.1% of them are involved in sports, according to the Aspen Institute Project Play on aspenprojectplay.org. Sports contain many positive and beneficial aspects for children to grow up on that can be very valuable to them in the long run. But nonetheless, some encounter negative experiences when playing, specifically hazing. Veteran members of sports teams within high school and colleges often haze newer, younger members of the team during the season. This results in physical and physiological injuries that often go unknown until they become reported. The effects of this can be very harmful, and we all need to band together to understand how it came about, the current data, a possible solution, and a future outcome. To begin, we first need to know the history of hazing and reasoning behind it. The earliest recording of it occurred at occurred at Plato's Academy in 387 BC. They saw it as a natural way to teach newcomers, which was all explained by Ruth Sterner in the History of Hazing in American Higher Education. Plato was against these and compared these acts to those of wild animals, but nonetheless, students still decided to participate them even with the criticism. At the time, hazing, which was called penalism, would have newer students buy refreshments for the upperclassmen at the end of the first year in order to celebrate them making it through the year. A little bit later on, the English actually took to it as well and would practice flagging. They even had master's degree students show proof that some kind of documented proof that they went through this in order to be accepted into the program. They also had some faculty show proof that they also experienced some kind of hazing, some form of hazing, in order to get the job. The reason was to make new students recognize their status compared to upperclassmen, and in order to establish themselves as members of the university, they had to show some kind of devotion to it. As hazing migrated to America, it went through a few changes before becoming what we see today in the movies and TV shows, or what we experience. So Sterner went into detail about how it was first noted at Harvard, whose faculty actually decided the actions that were done to the students and not the other students. As time went on, extracurricular groups, who back then only focused on intellect issues among the university, adopted hazing by pulling pranks and stunts on the members within the groups. It wasn't until the 19th and 20th century that fraternities became popular, and it was a little bit later on in the 1880s that hazing was also beginning to be favored by them. Members saw hazing as a way to create loyalty and respect to the fraternity, and those who were new didn't often report what was happening because they wanted to be included in this brotherhood. Hazing is still seen among fraternities and sororities today, except it's now become popular with sports teams who want to create this close-knit bond between teammates. And it still continues on within the sport community, because the older kids who experience it as the new people only see it as fair that the newcomers experience the same thing as they did. And it's pretty much just a cycle that goes on and on and on. So next, Emily's going to take over, and she's going to talk about some of the data that we found about hazing in sports.
Hello, I'm Emily, and I will take over now. I will begin to discuss the current trends related to this hazing issue. Hazing currently remains a highly prominent issue at all levels of athletics, high school, college, and professional. The main issue here is that the majority of hazing-related incidents remain hidden from the national and local media. Alfred University, which is a small private institution right in the middle of New York City, they performed a study and discovered that 80% of college athletes have experienced any sort of hazing. However, the vast majority of these incidents remain unreported and never saw any repercussions. This is the main issue related to hazing. People weren't getting in trouble, so it continues to happen because people think that they can get away with it and it's all fun and games, but that's not the case. Currently, the number of incidents that have gained media attention have begun to steadily increase since 1980. This is when the media first began to accept and to perceive the abuse of athletes by other athletes as a story worthy of a matter to discuss on a large and even on a national scale. Today, more than 250,000 students report having experienced hazing after joining their college athletics team. Related to this, hazing ranges on many different levels. 50% of female NCAA Division I athletes have reported being hazed. And to go into more detail regarding these women, 20% of female NCAA athletes were subjected to an alcohol-related hazing. An even higher percent of these athletes revealed that they were victims of mental hazing, ranging from uncomfortable singing all the way to being kidnapped, which seems like two different extremes. I can only imagine what's in the middle of that. An additional 10% of these women were physically hazed, whether it was by being branded, by being tattooed, beaten, thrown in the water, or having their head physically shaved. And then lastly, another 6 to 9% of these females experienced a sexual-related hazing, which includes harassment or sexual assault. To further emphasize the extent of the seriousness that hazing brings, a specific example of hazing comes out of Trumbull High School, which is in Connecticut. 8 of their students were arrested, and then 7 of those 8 were expelled from the school after a student was injured physically and emotionally in a hazing ritual. This was by athletes to a new member of their team. The victim was stuffed inside of a locker, slammed into a wall, and then proceeded to be sodomized with a plastic knife handle during a series of attacks. It was reported after that both the basketball coach and the wrestling coach witnessed the victim being hogtied and proceeded to do nothing. Once again, it's the lack of repercussions and the lack of punishments that continues to make hazing such an issue. Luckily, it seems like the future of hazing is changing for the better, hopefully. And I say hopefully because there's a newly proposed law that could help us here, but it has to be passed first. The REACH Act would require universities to include any hazing incidents into their crime reports. And then the universities would have to release these reports each year to the public. This would also mandate for educational programs to teach students about hazing. I think this is important because if students can learn the signs and learn ways that they could say no to hazing, then changes will be imminent. Currently, only 44 out of our 50 states do have a hazing-related statute. So even if this bill does not become a law, it might encourage the remaining 6 states to begin to initiate a hazing-related regulation to help front this issue. Also, fortunately, the outlook of hazing is actually appearing much better than it has in the past. Since 1959, last year, 2020, was the very first year where a hazing-related death did not occur. Yeah, hazing is so serious that people lose their lives every single year due to a hazing-related incident. Well, every year except for last year. So I guess the fact that last year did not have a death is a positive in itself, and I hope that that most definitely brings some sort of hope for the future outlook of hazing in the United States and everywhere, because it is truly a problem everywhere you go. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Megan Seeloff. Hazing can be prevented through getting rid of social power and returning athletes. One way to reduce the power differential between returners and incoming players is by having everyone on the same level of authority. It can reduce the urge to attack the incoming players just because they're younger and less experienced. A way to do this is to eliminate seniority and respect that everyone is their own person with their own feelings. Another way to prevent it is to create strong discipline for hazing. Some may recommend suspension, removal from the team, expulsion, or even jail time depending on how serious the effects are. There can also be a zero tolerance policy that's formed where athletes are automatically removed from the team if they are hazing others. There could also be rewards given to athletes who turn in those who are hazing. The school could also make sure that the coaches in every sport are prepared for these issues through training, which can help the athletes. By ending hazing in athletics, it can cause a team to grow together rather than grow apart. Some teammates may hold grudges against those who haze them, therefore separating the team. By eliminating hazing altogether, the team will be better with teamwork, causing them to work together and perform better. It may be upsetting to those who were hazed before the incoming players, but in the long run, it will be better for the team as a whole. Another thing that happens when we eliminate hazing is that it will weed out the people who don't want to take the sport seriously. If all a player is there for is to mess around and haze their teammates, then eliminating hazing will also get rid of that teammate. No one wants to be a part of a team that doesn't play well because their teammates don't take the sport seriously. It can also help save the athletes from psychological consequences. Some forms of hazing can cause athletes poor self-esteem, PTSD, and depression. Also, in rare circumstances, the depression stemming from hazing can cause the victim to commit suicide. All in all, hazing is dangerous to athletics and athletes. By eliminating or reducing it, it can create a safer space for athletes to perform as best to their abilities. Thank you for listening.